Hello and welcome to Your Community, Your World. My name is Shalala Denika. This program looks at what's happening within your community. We thank God for a new week. In England, we now have a 3-tier local lockdown system, the top tier being the strictest. London is currently on tier 2. On today's show, we shall be discussing the Windrush scheme, and this is part of our Black History Month celebration. My guest today is David, and David is the Windrush Outreach Coordinator. David, welcome to the program.
Welcome, thanks for having me.
Okay, it's a pleasure. Now, David, Windrush, we've been hearing about this Windrush scheme. Now, just give us an overview of what this Windrush scheme is all about.
Okay, yeah. Well, scheme came about as a result of essentially the Windrush scandal, where a lot of people who previously thought they had status and rights to be here, it suddenly transpired through no fault of their own that they didn't. As a consequence of that, they were then subject to a lot of what's called the compliant measures, which meant that people couldn't get access to housing, they couldn't get jobs, they were denied access to healthcare. And people, certainly from my parents' generation, who came here, as Windrush says, from 72 years ago when the Empire Windrush landed at Tilbury Docks, to come and work in the country and help build the country up, those kind of people started suffering a lot of loss and a lot of negative impacts through something which they did not know about. So the Windrush scheme was set up to help people obtain the documentation which would demonstrate their legal status. I have to emphasize again, this was not through people's individual faults. It was nothing to do with people. People didn't know about this. Situations changed, and people, when they originally came to the country, they were invited, and they came with on the understanding that they were citizens and they had legal status in this country.
Okay, thanks for that overview. But who is eligible to apply for this scheme?
Well, this is one of the things I always need to get right, because I know there's a lot of misunderstanding in terms of eligibility on the scheme. Because it's called Windrush, because it's been known as a Windrush scandal, people think it's just applies to members of the Commonwealth or Windrush Caribbean people, and it doesn't.
Okay.
Anybody who's been settled in the UK or any Commonwealth country before 1973 can apply, but also anybody who has been in the country before 1988 can apply. So that means you don't have to be Commonwealth, you don't have to be member of the part of the Caribbean. You can be Brazilian, you can be Russian. Okay. If you country before 1988 and you had issues and you can't demonstrate your status, you are eligible to apply to the scheme.
Wow, I didn't know that. I just thought it was just for Commonwealth citizens.
Yeah, that's why I always have to make sure I emphasize it, because that, like I said, because the Windrush scandal all broke in March, April 2018, and media on the name Windrush because it was to coincide with the Empire Windrush when it landed. So people automatically assumed that, and the government also assumed that name of Windrush. The negative impact of that is that in people's minds, people only thought it was therefore for people on the Windrush, which were Caribbean people, or by the Commonwealth. But it isn't. The scheme is open to anybody, like I said, who was here before 1988, who have not been able to demonstrate their legal lawful status, and who have encountered difficulties because of that.
Finding the right paperwork is usually tricky. So what are the right paperwork?
My parents came here in 1957 and 1959 respectively.
Okay.
Passports. My parents sadly have passed away now, but if I asked them, if they were to be asked now to get those passports, they wouldn't have where they are. Documents are 40, 50 years old. There's an expectation that people will not be able to supply all the documents dating back half a century.
Yeah.
I used to live in London. I moved to my hometown in Sheffield 20 years ago. If someone was to ask me to find paperwork from my address in London 20 years ago, I couldn't find it. So am I expecting people to find documents half a century ago. So there's an expectation that people won't be able to find everything. What they ask is to supply anything you have. That could be old school letters, that could be old doctor's certificates, that could be old housing bills, rent bills, whatever. Anything which will help us establish what's called a residential footprint, or proof that someone has been in this country for a number of years. What one of the best things we always say to people is, and I know my parents and a lot of Commonwealth and Caribbean people, when they first came across, they came to work. They came to help build a country up. As a consequence of that, they got national insurance numbers. If you've got a national insurance number, that enables us to liaise with Department of Work and Pensions, HMRC. So it's a partnership. People bring whatever they have, and then we will look to do our own searches to try and find other bits of information to join up the puzzle, as it were. So please, I always emphasize to people, do not be off-put if they've only got one or two bits of information. We can help. We are here to help. We are the manifestation of the government's commitment to right the wrongs. So we are here to try and right those wrongs. We will help with people. We will help people to try and get as much information possible to enable them to demonstrate their status.
How much do you think it costs to apply?
It doesn't cost anything. The whole scheme is free, because if I go back again in terms of the overview of the Windrush scheme,
yeah,
it's part of an apology. Like I say, people have been impacted on this through no fault of their own. The government has apologised to it. The then Prime Minister Theresa May and the then Home Secretary Amber Rudd apologised. All subsequent Home Secretaries have apologised and continue to apologise. As part of that apology, they set up this Windrush scheme to try and rectify that. So if we were going then to charge people for that, that doesn't sit right. So there is no fee. Even to people contact us, we will send out forms. The forms are in free post envelopes. People can send things back in free post. There is no charge at all.
Okay, that's interesting to note that. Now, obviously, COVID-19 came and no one expected that to happen. Mm-hmm. Now, how has COVID-19, affected people's application? Because I know that for one or two people that I know that applied, when COVID struck, there was an end to there was a delay to the process. Now, how has it been?
Yeah, it's just like everything. COVID has taken over the whole country. It's shut down lots of things. But for us, we are still providing a service. Lots of our people work from home, so we can still process applications. The principal way people contact us will be through our call centre helpline. That helpline has and is still up and running. It has not been affected by COVID.
Okay.
Able to have support, so the lines are still maintained. So please don't think because of COVID a person cannot make contact with us and apply for assistance. They can, because at the end of the day, we have to make sure we are available to people in order to be able to provide that support. I can give you the number of our contact centre. It's free. Like I said before, everything's free. And this free phone number is again available to people 7 days a week. The number is 0800 678 1925. That's 0800 678 1925. And people can ring that number and speak to a call centre handler and speak to that person in confidence and have complete confidentiality. Please, I've got to emphasise this. It is a free service. It's a service which is available all the time. And ultimately, it's a service which, and I know I've got to address this, which there is no fear attached to it, in the sense that I know a lot of people are worried that if they make contact with the immigration, with the Home Office, it could lead to them being arrested and deported. That does not happen. I have to emphasize that strongly. That does not happen.
Is there a deadline to this scheme? Does it have an end date?
At the moment, there is no deadline. We've never been told there's a deadline. I don't know, in 2 years' time, you might say there is a deadline. But at the moment, there is no deadline.
You're an outreach worker now, and you've obviously mixed with our communities. So why do you think that people are not taking advantage of this scheme or, applying for this scheme?
A number of reasons. Mistrust, fear, previous experience. People, to be honest, a lot of their interactions with the Home Office haven't been positive. And it's not just over the last 2 or 3 years. This has been the experience over the last 4 or 5 decades. So when the department says something, I can understand people being hesitant, bearing in mind all the negative interactions they've had for the last 4 or 5 decades, culminating now in the Windrush scandal. For a lot of people just say, well, this is exactly what we've been talking about for the last 20, 30 years. Now you've only admitted it. You're saying you're going to help us. Why would I suddenly all think all's forgiven and let's come running up to your offices? Why would I do that? Show me what you are doing. Let me have some proof that your commitment is genuine. And that takes time. But that is what we have to do, and that's what I do. I've been, like I say, me and my colleagues, we've been doing this for 2 years up and down the country. We've been to Scotland, Wales, Southampton, London. We've been all over the place. We go there continuously. And I say, if it wasn't for COVID, we'd still be doing this. We go out there to meet people, and we hopefully meet people and make positive impressions, because at the end of the day, you can get a politician saying whatever. You can have an advert saying whatever. But most of our people understand, if they get recommended, or if somebody they know says this is okay, you're far more likely to go with that person than a billboard or an advert. So my commitment, my aim is, when I meet people, is to make a favourable impression, so people can think, well, hey, they've met David from the Home Office and it was okay. I've been on the events. I was an event in Lewisham in London. I think it was June 2018.
Okay.
Conversation with a chap, and after that the chap said, thanks for this, David. What I will now do, will go out back to my people and tell them now it's safe to come and talk to you. Because I'm representing, because we weren't sure. But having spoken to you, we think this is something, so you're a person who we can talk to, and there's genuineness here, so we can engage. And that's what my job's about, getting people to feel they have a degree of trust within the department to come and speak to us. Because if people don't, sadly, it's people's situations which remain the same.
David, maybe I'll just use this as a last question. Now, there are occasions whereby people who could have been eligible for this scheme have sadly gone back home because they didn't want to overstay, or, they didn't want to do anything illegal. So does that apply to them? So even though they're not in the UK at the moment, can they still apply?
Absolutely. Like I said, the email address, they can make contact on the email address. Yes, because it's recognised that people have gone back home. They've either been deported, or they felt the conditions were so bad they needed to go back. So it's absolutely open to people. And that also, in terms of compensation, it's open to people. If people have suffered loss, if people have suffered detriment, once we help people restore get the documents for legality and status, compensation's available. And I would always say to people, I'd absolutely encourage people to apply, get the status sorted, and then apply for compensation.
Thank you, David, for all you've said. And we wish you the best as you continue your outreach work.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks.
Lots of information to take in. Please don't go away. I'll take a short break and I'll continue with the compensation scheme.
Iron Day City Hotel Limited for confident hospitality. Are you looking for an atmosphere of serenity, extreme comfort, class, and hospitality? Look no further, because Iron A City Hotel Limited is a perfect choice. Tucked in the heart of Lagos to take you away from the everyday hustle and bustle of the city, bringing you to a state of total calm and bliss. Our facilities include exquisitely furnished rooms with 24-hour power supply, internet, swimming pool, standard gym, banquet hall, restaurant, and exotic bar. Located at number 2, Majeko Dumi Street, off Allen Avenue, Ikeja, Lagos. Telephone 0807 666 6655. Or you can send an email to ironacityhotel@yahoo.com or visit our website www.ironacityhotel.com. Iron A City Hotels Limited, for convenient hospitality. City Hotel Limited for convenient hospitality.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you've just listened to David, and at the end of his interview, he mentioned something about the compensation. And so, as a result of that, I want to speak to a lady called Joanne. She's the Quality Assurance Manager for the Windrush Compensation Scheme. Joanne, thanks for joining us. And how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Now, can you please give us an overview of the Windrush Compensation Scheme?
So, as you said, you've spoken to my colleague David, and he sort of worked on the task force where we've actually helped people sort out their status and resolve their situations that have been created because of their inability to work and live in the UK. So the compensation scheme follows on from that, and it's for where people can make claims for situations that they've faced where they've not been able to demonstrate that they've had a right to work in the UK. So they can claim for things like that.
In order to apply for compensation, am I correct in assuming that you have to first of all apply for the Windrush scheme before you can apply for the compensation?
Yeah, so no, you don't. The key thing is that you have to have got your status resolved in order to apply for compensation, because the whole process of the compensation is that you're claiming for situations that you face because you weren't able to demonstrate your status. So at the point of you submitting a Windrush compensation application, you must have either got no time limit, indefinitely to remain, or have been granted your citizenship.
Okay.
And
so
then we'll consider application.
Okay. So who can apply then? Who can apply for the compensation scheme?
So the compensation scheme was set up for people that have essentially been affected by what we call the Windrush generation. Okay. So that's people that entered the UK before 1973. It also goes for people that have who have entered the UK before 1988. So you can apply through the scheme for if you've entered the UK before those days.
Okay, and I know, when we talk about compensation, everybody thinks about, the pound signs begin to, roll in your mind. But what are people claiming for?
So Firstly, we tell everyone to sort of contact the helpline and actually get hold of an application form, because there's quite a few categories. There's definitely over 10 categories for you to claim for. But for example, there's certain immigration applications that you can claim for. So certain associated legal fees. You can claim if you're denied employment. You can claim if you are denied anything to do with housing and homelessness. So there's quite a few to claim from, so it'd be worthwhile for you to actually look at the application form.
Okay, so I'm assuming, without looking at the application form, I'm assuming that within the application form, there are different categories and then you tick whatever you're claiming for.
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
Okay, now would you, when you talk about compensation, suddenly everybody thinks about, oh, do I have to have a lawyer to do this, or is it something that the individual can apply for themselves?
We've tried to make the form as user-friendly as possible, and what we've done is we've sort of designed it so that an individual can fill it in by themselves. We've got a team that works with them, caseworkers, and what they will do is they will work tirelessly with you to get an end result. So a caseworker will contact you, ask more questions, ask you to help you gather information, and to help get a final award. So we've tried to do it so that you don't need to have solicitors, but obviously we can't stop you if you wish to.
How long does it take to receive compensation from the day you apply?
So it's hard to actually give a time limit to how long it will take. That's simply because I've explained that there's so many different categories. And what we will do then is that it will go through to a caseworker. A caseworker will make contact with the customer and they will actually help gather some more information. So because every case is so unique and because it's talking about historical events, we need to try and help them build that picture and build a total situation of the claim. So there isn't technically a time limit, but the caseworkers do try and aim to get it resolved as soon as possible. When we pick up a claim, if we can make an interim payment to them in the meantime, we will try our best to get that done.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Interim payments can be made where possible. That's good to know about that. Now, what happens if, at the end of the claim, the department says they'll be offered X amount, but then the claimant is saying, no, that's too small. How does that get resolved?
So in the letter that's sent out to the customer, we will break down and explain how we've come to that decision. And at the end of the letter, it says that if you have to accept or ask for a review. So every single body has got a right to have a review on their claim, where they're saying, no, I don't agree with the decision. Can you reconsider it again? And we have a team that's specifically built up where it's called the Tier 1 review team, and they will look at the claim again, and if the claimant wants to provide any additional information, they can do that, and then we will review it again. And again, if we then sort of make another offer or agree with the original decision and the customer doesn't agree with that decision, it will then go on to what we call a Tier 2 review panel, and that's by an external organisation.
Oh, it's good to hear that an external organization can be involved. That's interesting to note. Now, for people who are living overseas, because like I was explaining to David earlier on in my interview, that some people might have left the country because they didn't want to overstay or for one reason or the other. Now, for someone who's left the country, can they still claim?
Of course, yes. The form is actually designed that it doesn't matter where you are. The key thing is that you've got your status and you've experienced some difficulties, so it can be made from anywhere across the world.
Okay. Now, what advice would you give to communities that have been affected by the Windrush scheme?
I mean, I'll always advise people to actually make contact with the contact centre first, the help team. They can give you some advice and they can point you in the right direction. When it comes to making a claim for compensation, I would always say seek some advice from from our colleagues to see what you want to claim, but always just get hold of an application form, fill it in, because you've got nothing to lose. And as I've already said, we've got a team that works tirelessly to actually get as much information as we can with you, and we will work with you to try and get a successful claim award for you. So I would just say pick up the phone and make a claim.
Okay, I mean, obviously, COVID-19 has impacted on the way we work. For example, many people in government departments now work from home. Has this got any adverse effect about, how long it takes? Does it reflect on that?
Not at all. We've all got access to all the documents that we've got. Everything's made online, and we have a way of communicating with each other, so it's not made an effect at all.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. Is there any other thing you want to add to tell our audience?
No, I just encourage them to make a claim, really. From obviously, I go out on the outreaches and I speak to people, and people are quite hesitant to actually submit claims for compensation. But all I can say is that you've really got nothing to lose. So just make a claim, and everything that's said is confidential, and we will deal with you with the utmost respect.
Thank you, Joanne. So we wish you the best, and we also hope that our viewers will take this opportunity, because we don't know how long it will last for. Thank you so much for coming.
What an eye-opener. Please do spread the word. You can watch this again on our YouTube channel, Your Community, Your World. And while you're there, please do subscribe. I'd like to thank David and Joanne from the Home Office. My name is Shola Ladenika. Thank you for watching. But before I go, I want to remind you that it's our responsibility to halt the spread of this virus. And we can do that by simply following our local lockdown restrictions, keep washing our hands, keep maintaining social distancing, and use our face coverings. I'll see you same time next week, by the grace of God. Bye for now.
There's a new virus in town, going from place to places. It's called the COVID-19, spreading its wings around the world. It's a must for us to keep good hygiene by washing our hands, keeping ourselves, keeping our environment clean.